Every clock in the city showed exactly midnight when the most extraordinary thing happened. The library that had never existed before suddenly appeared at the end of a quiet street, its tall windows glowing with warm, golden light that seemed to pulse gently like a sleeping giant's heartbeat. The building looked ancient and timeless, constructed from stone that appeared to have been weathered by centuries of wind and rain, yet somehow also looked as if it had just been completed by master craftsmen who understood secrets of architecture that had been forgotten by the modern world. Walking toward this mysterious library felt like being drawn by an invisible thread, each step bringing a growing sense of anticipation, mixed with the strangest feeling of coming home to a place never visited before. The heavy wooden doors opened silently at the lightest touch, revealing an interior that defied all logic and geometry. The space inside was impossibly vast, stretching upward and outward in directions that shouldn't have been able to fit within the building glimpsed from the street. Towering shelves reached toward a ceiling lost in comfortable shadows, filled with more books than seemed possible to exist in one place. The volumes weren't organized by any system recognizable to ordinary librarians. Instead, they seemed arranged by some mystical logic that grouped together books that belonged together in ways deeper than alphabetical order or subject matter. Ancient leather-bound tomes sat next to modern paperbacks, poetry collections nestled against scientific journals, and cookbooks shared shelf space with astronomy texts, all somehow creating perfect harmony rather than chaos. Soft pools of light emanated from sources that weren't quite visible, not electric bulbs or fluorescent tubes, but something warmer and more alive. As if the very air in the library had learned how to glow with its own gentle radiance. The light was perfect for reading, neither too bright nor too dim, and it seemed to adjust itself automatically to whatever was needed, brightening when examining fine print and softening when the eyes needed rest. Throughout this vast space, comfortable reading chairs appeared wherever they were most needed, deep leather armchairs that seemed to embrace anyone who sat in them. Window seats cushioned with pillows that looked like they had been arranged by someone who understood exactly how bodies wanted to curl up with good books, and small tables perfectly positioned to hold cups of tea that appeared as if by magic whenever the thought of warm liquid crossed the mind. The silence in the midnight library wasn't empty but full, pregnant with all the stories contained within the countless volumes, humming quietly with the accumulated wisdom of ages, alive with the gentle energy of words waiting to be discovered. Occasionally, very soft sounds drifted through the space, the whisper of pages turning somewhere in the distant stacks, the almost inaudible sigh of books settling more comfortably on their shelves, the barely perceptible breathing of the building itself as it held all this knowledge in its protective embrace. Moving deeper into the library revealed reading nooks and study alcoves tucked into unexpected corners, each one designed as if specifically for solitary contemplation and deep absorption in whatever text called for attention. Some areas were arranged for serious scholarship with large tables and proper lighting for note-taking and research. Others were clearly meant for pure pleasure reading, with impossibly comfortable chairs positioned to catch the best light and surrounded by side tables perfectly sized for holding snacks and warm beverages. The books themselves seemed almost alive, their spines glowing faintly when they contained exactly the information or story that was most needed at that particular moment. Reaching for any volume that caught the eye invariably resulted in discovering exactly the right book. Not necessarily the book that had been sought, but the book that the soul most needed to encounter at that precise moment in time. Romance novels appeared for hearts that needed healing, philosophy texts materialized for minds seeking meaning, and poetry collections revealed themselves to spirits hungry for beauty. Time moved differently within the midnight library, flowing like honey rather than rushing like a river, allowing for the kind of deep reading that had become almost impossible in the outside world of constant interruptions and digital distraction. Hours could pass in what felt like minutes, or minutes could stretch luxuriously into what felt like hours, all depending on the needs of the reader and the demands of the text being absorbed. Other visitors occasionally appeared among the stacks, silent figures who moved like ghosts between the shelves, each one clearly on their own important mission of discovery and learning. They nodded politely when their paths crossed, but seemed to understand intuitively that this was a place for individual communion with written wisdom rather than social conversation. Their presence added to the library's atmosphere rather than disrupting it, creating a sense of shared purpose and mutual respect for the sacred act of reading. The Midnight Library contained not just books but entire worlds waiting to be explored. Opening any volume could transport the reader instantly to distant planets, ancient civilizations, future societies, or inner landscapes of the human heart that existed nowhere else but in the realm of imagination and story. Each book was a doorway, each chapter a journey, each page a step deeper into realms of possibility that existed beyond the constraints of ordinary reality. As dawn began to approach, though somehow this was sensed rather than seen, since the library existed outside normal time and weather, a gentle reluctance to leave began to settle over anyone lucky enough to have discovered this magical place. The books that had been read during the night seemed to glow with extra warmth, as if they were grateful for having been chosen and absorbed. Knowledge gained felt permanent and precious. Stories encountered seemed to have become part of the reader's own personal mythology. When the first rays of sunlight began to touch the city outside, the Midnight Library started its slow fade back into whatever dimension it inhabited during daylight hours. The books grew dimmer, the comfortable chairs became less substantial, and the impossible vastness of the interior began to contract back toward normal architectural proportion. But the memory remained vivid and nourishing, the memory of a place where all the world's wisdom waited patiently to be discovered, where reading was elevated from mere activity to sacred practice, where the boundaries between reader and story dissolved into something approaching pure understanding, and where the miracle of written language revealed itself in all its power to transport, transform, and illuminate the eternal human hunger for knowledge, beauty, and truth.